Hello and welcome to KQED Newsroom. I'm Scott Shafer, in for Thuy Vu. Later on our show, the NFL players' choir, drones, and efforts to fight the Zika virus. But first, Super Bowl fever. The Bay Area is at the center of the sporting world this week. The kickoff at Levi Stadium for Super Bowl 50 is at 3:30 Sunday afternoon, and the region has been gearing up for the big game. Football hasn't been the only big sports story around here. The red-hot Golden State Warriors earned a trip to the White House this week, where President Obama honored last year's NBA champs. And joining us now is longtime Bay Area sports host Rick Tittle. Rick, good to have you with us. Great time to be a sports guy.
Or gal, yes. It's a great time right now.
So it's the Carolina Panthers versus the Denver Broncos. Not what the Bay Area had in mind when they were making the bid for the Super Bowl. They were hoping it would be the 49ers or at least your Oakland Raiders. What's the storyline here with this game?
Well, the storyline obviously is the quarterback position, and quarterbacks run this league. And so you have the young, brash guy in Cam Newton, Heisman Trophy winner. You also have Peyton Manning, who's been around the block, been the face of the NFL, and most likely this will be his last game ever. You have the fantastic Denver defense against the fantastic Carolina offense, but you switch that around a little bit. Denver's offense, which is not the greatest, and Carolina's defense is pretty darn good. They've been sort of a little bit understated. They're very, very good, though.
You know, we're kind of in our own little bubble here. How is this playing nationally? I mean, how much excitement is there outside the Bay Area? You know, of this matchup. I mean.
Yeah, it used to be that maybe you needed a New York and an LA team for Madison Avenue. I think we've sort of transcended that now. It's like a national holiday. And I was wondering when we got the Super Bowl here in the city how much people would really care, and they do. And I just got off Radio Row at the Moscone Center, did a whole week of shows there, and it's just non-stop player and celebrity coming through.
Do you think it matters that the team is, you know, in Santa Clara? That's where the game's being played. I mean, would it be a different feeling if they were playing at Candlestick?
I don't think so. I mean, I look back to '85 when they had it at Stanford. That was a little bit wonky. But now, no one ever brings up that the stadium is actually an hour and a half away in traffic. No one really thinks about that. Everything is going on downtown here. Yeah.
You mentioned Cam Newton, the up-and-coming star of the Carolina Panthers, and similar style to our own Colin Kaepernick. He's a run-and-gun kind of quarterback, very brash, and yet their careers have gone in very different directions. What do you take away from that?
Well, I mean, you can sort of look at them physically and say that they're kind of similar. But I mean, Cam Newton, after going to Florida, sitting behind Tebow, he got in trouble. He had to go to junior college, but he came back to Auburn, won a national championship. And meanwhile, you had Colin up at Reno running the Chris Alt's pistol program. And, you know, a second-round pick, he moved up after the combine. But Cam, #1 overall pick. And Cam is just a beast in the way that he's got a fantastic arm. He's got almost like a tight end's body, but he runs like a wide receiver. And also, he can read defenses about 100% better than Colin Kaepernick.
Differences in the way they've been coached and their character as people?
I don't say so much. I don't think it's coaching. I think that Cam Newton is just vastly more talented than Kaepernick. And we did see Kaepernick's mood change, that when he took over from Alex Smith, he was kind of like this aw shucks guy to maybe the more ornery guy by the time of his tenure. And who said it's going to end? I mean, maybe Chip Kelly will put him back in. Yeah. We'll see about that.
There was another quarterback in the news this week, sadly, Ken Stabler, who died last year. Brain autopsy revealed that he had traumatic brain disease, as many quarterbacks and NFL players have, blows to the head repeatedly. What's your takeaway in the fact that this is coming out now, right before the Super Bowl?
Yeah, the CTE thing, of course, we had the movie with Will Smith, Concussion. I think they tried to make the NFL look a little bit evil. To me, and not to sound cold-blooded, but it's like suing the tobacco company once you get a disease. I think we all know what we're getting into here. I probably have CTE to some extent playing in college. I think everybody has it. Now, NFL players have it more than anyone. And Ken Stabler was my guy. He's my favorite player of all time. So I'm not surprised. I think at some level, we all have it.
Well, there was some other sports news this week, Thursday to be exact. Golden State Warriors got some love at the White House. President Obama welcomed last year's NBA champs to the White House.
Steph's a pretty good shooter. For those of you who watched the game against the Wizards last night, he was, to use slang, he was clowning. jumping up and down. This is a great basketball team, but it's a great organization. It's a great culture, and these are outstanding young men.
And Rick Tittle, obviously, this is a president that has some street cred within the NBA. He's a big basketball player himself, and plays golf with Steph Curry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think William Howard Taft would have the same kind of street cred that President Obama has. And yeah, look, I mean, he actually understands the sport. And we remember when he first took office, he'd do his little March Madness pool as well. So it's nice when they get to go. And as a Warrior fan, I mean, I went 40 years with no titles, and about 35 of those years were miserable years as well. So that's really neat to see them there.
Before I let you go, prediction for Sunday?
I think the Carolina Panthers win by 3. I think it's going to be a very, very tight game. I'm going to go 24-21. I don't think Cam will choke, and I don't think Manning will play poorly, but I think 24-21 Carolina.
All right, we'll have you on next week to go through that prediction.
Looking forward to it.
Rick Tittle, thanks so much for coming in.
Anytime.
God is never too far from the gridiron, and I don't mean the Hail Mary pass. It's not unusual to hear prayers in the locker room or professional athletes thanking God when they win. Well, on the eve of the big game, some current and former NFL players will raise their voices in praise in a Super Bowl gospel celebration. They're part of the NFL Players Choir. Here with us now are choir director and Grammy Award winner Myron Butler, former linebacker Brian Scott, who played with several teams, including the Atlanta Falcons and the Buffalo Bills, and Oric Johnson, former linebacker with the Patriots, Vikings, and New York Jets. Gentlemen, good to have you here.
Thanks for having us.
Let me begin with you, Myron. You know, a lot of people, when I've told them I'm going to be talking to you guys, they say, I didn't know the NFL had a choir.
Yes.
How did it come about?
In 2008, it was a desire to bring guys together that sing, that love to sing, and just to really foster a community with a choir so that guys could express their gifts and their talents in the choir.
How did you know they liked to sing?
That was a good thing. Unbeknownst to a lot of people, there are guys that are in the NFL that really have a desire for music, and whether they play or whether they sing or write music. So at that point, it's just, amongst the camaraderie of the guys, hey, this guy plays or this guy sings, and it kind of comes together like that.
What about you guys? Why do you sing in the choir?
Well, go ahead. Yeah,
Brian,
go right ahead. Well, so for me, I've always been passionate about music, but what the choir delivers, what it is for me, is a time to come together as a unified front. And you hear so many negative reports always in the media about players doing wrong things, but there is a group of guys, a huge group of guys actually, that's out there that we don't live perfectly, but we try to do the right thing, and it gives us that platform to be transparent and vulnerable and just fellowship, all while partaking in one of our passions, which is music.
And for me, it was that wow moment. When I say that wow moment, I was one of those guys that Myron was just talking about. My passion was first always music and then theater.
Even when you were playing football?
Oh yeah, it was always music, theater, and then football. And so, although you don't take it for granted, whatever opportunity God allows you to have, you go full force at it. But I knew what I wanted to do when the game was over, and I wanted to do it while I was playing the game too. But I always felt like the oddball. When there was always a chaplain on every team, and every off day we get a chance to, whoever wants to, you do a prayer with him, and it was like me and maybe one other guy on almost every team I played for. Yeah. And so that was an opportunity to be around guys who fellowship. You
used, Brian, an interesting word. You said it allows you to be vulnerable. Say more about that, because in football you're not really allowed to be vulnerable.
No, you're not. Well, see, so you always have to be on, right? The camera is always on you, but we're human, and we go through things, and it allows us that platform to talk about what's going on in our lives without having to worry about what is society or the outside world going to think, because we're looked at as modern day gladiators, but we hurt and feel just like everybody else does. So we can kind of let down our guard and share what's going on in our world away from the game.
Myron, what's the toughest part of recruiting guys to sing with you guys?
Well, it is helping those guys that have fear of going to that other place. They may have the ability, but it's, can I do it? Can I sing that song? Can I, really execute this music? Helping them to overcome that. So a lot of times when I'm in rehearsal, I'm, cheering them on. I'm saying, hey, you can do it. It's tough love, but, a lot of times it is helping them overcome that fear of, can I do this?
You ever have to cut anybody?
Well, you know what? Sometimes maybe not from the choir, but maybe from a solo if they're not quite just ready.
Okay. Well, would you
But
sing
he's
a little?
encouraging though. Very
Yeah. He brings it out of you.
This guy, he doesn't, if he's gonna cut you, he's kind of really on the low.
Yeah.
You don't really know.
That's a nice way.
Tough
It's a nice way to say it.
Tough love. Well, would you sing a little bit for us right now?
Sure.
Wherever I go, whatever I do, you're in love with me. I'm in love with you. I'm a worshiper. I'm a worshiper. I'm a worshiper. Wherever I go, whatever I do, you're in love with me. I'm in love with you. I'm a worshiper. I'm a worshiper. I'm a worshiper. 'Cause they don't know that I'm a worshiper. And they don't know that we're in love with you. See, they don't know that we are worshipers. And they don't know that we're in love with you.
All right, awesome. You guys are both linebackers, or you were. Are there some positions that make better singers?
It wouldn't be linebackers. I don't think it would be linebackers at all.
Surprisingly, I will say I think it's O-line.
Offensive lineman. I was about to say the same thing.
O-line and
Why?
D linemen.
Why?
I don't know what it is,
I don't
but
know what it is either.
a lot of linemen I know.
Maybe because they
can
don't get a
sing.
lot. They don't like. Maybe they don't get a lot of attention.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Yeah, I'll say linemen.
The offense and defense, especially offensive linemen, it's a hard game for them. The only time they get recognized usually is when they make a mistake.
If something goes wrong.
So they're very tight-knit. They're a very
Exactly.
tight-knit grip, and a lot of them are really close to God. So maybe that's why.
Maybe that's what it is.
Myron, in terms of the difficulty getting these guys to perform, how much of it is sort of a stage fright kind of a thing versus like an image, like it doesn't go with the image of being an NFL player?
I think once the guys, have the desire and say, hey, this is something, that I can do, but I like to do. I don't know if it's necessarily about the image. I think it's about, the ability to execute, the ability to remember the song, the ability to do it well. Because like we're talking about, they're so used to performing at a high level, on the football field. So you take that same expectation level and it's placed on the music. So they don't want to just do it, haphazard. And I'm not going to let them do it haphazard. It's got to be great. Yeah. So it's just, can I execute this and it be great? I really think that's what it is.
What about you guys? How's it different from performing on a football field?
I think it's more difficult because I feel like I was a football player before I was a singer, and so it was just a little more natural to play football. Yeah. But I still enjoy it. I mean, you get nerves. I always say before we go out on the show, we get together, we huddle up, just like in the locker room. Mm-hmm. We say a prayer, we give our little chant, then we run out onto the stage, and it's almost like running out of the tunnel. And the adrenaline's going, and then you don't even think about it. You just have fun.
Yeah. Right. Well, guys, thanks so much for coming in. Really appreciate it. Myron Butler, director, Brian Scott, and OJ Oric Johnson. Thank you all very much for coming in. Good luck to you guys.
Thank you so much.
You bet.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Bring your team spirit, but leave your drone at home. The stadium is a no-drone zone.
For the big game on Sunday, the FAA has banned the use of drones anywhere near Levi Stadium in Santa Clara. But drones are being used for more than just cool aerial videos. In fact, several Silicon Valley entrepreneurs are finding new uses for these flying robots. Producer Shiraz Sadiq and reporter Monica Lamb visit a few startups to see what they're developing.
When you think about high-tech workplaces, rock quarries don't typically come to mind.
Slap this on.
But here in San Rafael, a robotic drone is taking off to survey and measure rock stockpiles. As a 5-pound unmanned aircraft flies along a pre-programmed route, it takes a photo every few seconds. It's part of a service offered by San Francisco startup SkyCatch, with a professional pilot and an engineer to track the drone's progress.
So it is following the path that you programmed for it.
That's exactly right. There's an autopilot on board that drone that's following the path that I've planned on my tablet here.
How does the drone know where it is?
We've got a very high accuracy GPS that's on that drone, as well as accelerometers, similar to what might be in your cell phone.
David Chen is Director of Engineering at SkyCatch.
The drone took about 700 photos in the morning. It took about 2 to 3 hours to process. What we end up with is a high-resolution 3D model of the entire site. It's accurate to the centimeter, and the clients can use this to measure volumes of stockpiles, changes on the terrain that they normally would take lots of time, like weeks for a human to manually measure. This is technology that didn't exist 2-3 years ago.
Changing how manual jobs are done is what drives SkyCatch CEO Christian Santz.
Drones will revolutionize how we do business. They're going to do a lot more jobs, and most of the jobs that are very dull, very dangerous, very hazardous are going to be done by drones, by robots.
I don't think we understand even 10% of the potential for drone applications in the United States or around the world that are doing mining type operations.
Jesse Kallman heads business development at Airware, a San Francisco startup that makes technology to automate drones for collecting aerial data.
A huge technical challenge for the industry today is automation. Automation is really what drives the ease of use, making sure that nearly anybody can use this, whether it's a cell tower climber, a claims adjuster, oil and gas workers.
Most drones sold in the U.S. are flown for fun by consumers who want to shoot aerial video or experience the thrill of flying. But for commercial use, an operator must get approval from the Federal Aviation Administration. The rules are strict and limit the drone to daytime flight below 500 feet and within view of the operator. But keeping a drone always within sight during missions can be limiting, says Kallman.
When you go beyond line of sight with one aircraft, you're able to cover a much wider area in space, and you're able to collect much more data in the same flight.
Drones are banned from flying over busy streets or in national parks, and privacy and safety regulations are still being worked out. Meanwhile, companies like Walmart and Amazon plan to use drones to track inventory and make deliveries.
Think about a scenario where Amazon wants to go in and deliver their packages, where Verizon wants to go and inspect their cell towers, where fire rescue needs to go in. How do all these different entities really manage who gets access to what airspace, who can fly when, where, how?
To tackle this challenge, Airware and other companies are working with scientists at the NASA Ames Research Center in Mountain View.
The main characteristics of drone traffic management are, first of all, drones don't hit each other. Second, drones don't get in the way of manned aviation. Third, the drone operator has complete awareness of all the constraints in the airspace, such as geofence areas.
Geofenced areas, like airports or city streets, are no-fly zones for drones. This system is being designed for commercial operations. Flight plans must be filed, and only one drone at a time can fly within the same airspace.
I specify a couple of parameters. For example, my flight number, what vehicle I'm actually going to fly, the start and end time. So this goes off to NASA and says, hey, is anyone else flying here? Can I reserve this time? And we got an approval, and it's ready to go.
Fly now,
While NASA and its partners keep developing the system, a Silicon Valley startup, Matternet, is already making deliveries by drone.
And now it will power up. And it's going to take about 90 seconds to show up on our cloud system. Okay. And then I can connect to it and instruct it through our mobile phone app here. It's ready to go. We can step back and press the takeoff button.
For this demo, the drone has to stay within view, as required by the FAA.
It knows exactly the obstacles, it knows the airspace, and we also know population density.
But it's not the U.S. where Matternet's drones are really taking off.
We as Matternet really believe in providing the capability to transport vaccines, medicine, blood in the developing world.
Around the world, 1 in 7 people lack access to reliable roads.
We saw in drones the fundamental invention that will allow us to create a new mode of transportation.
With Matternet's app, a user can launch the drone to send up to 2 pounds of payload, such as medicine, to a clinic about 12 miles away.
There is a need around the transportation of diagnostic samples for HIV/AIDS for children, and the average duration to transport those samples today in Malawi is almost 11 days. And with a system like this, you can do it well within a day.
Mapping software guides the drone to its destination, all without a human pilot.
10 to 20 years' time, there's going to be networks of these types of devices that will be transporting lightweight items in places in the developing world and in our cities and megacities.
The FAA is expected to release final rules for commercial drone operations by mid-2016.
That same level.
Meanwhile, entrepreneurs are hoping to put many more of these flying machines to work.
I think in 4 to 5 years, it's going to be the thing that is delivering your pizza, or the thing that's inspecting your cell tower, the thing that's actually saving people's lives after a tornado. It's just going to be a part of everyday life.
This week, the World Health Organization declared the Zika virus an international public health emergency. The virus is carried by mosquitoes and has been linked to birth defects. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention issued travel alerts for nearly 30 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, where the outbreaks of the virus have been reported. Here in the Bay Area, scientists are working on new technology that may help to quickly detect infections from the Zika virus. Joining me now is Dr. Charles Chu, a specialist in infectious diseases at UC San Francisco. Dr. Chu, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us, first of all, what exactly is the Zika virus and why are we so concerned about it?
Well, the Zika virus is a virus that's spread by mosquitoes. It's a mosquito-borne virus. It was actually detected a long time ago, actually in 1947. It was first identified in Africa. However, it's only been in the past year that we've seen an explosive increase in the number of infections, especially in the Western Hemisphere.
What changed?
So it's unknown really exactly what changed. It has been introduced in the Western Hemisphere because the Zika virus follows the mosquito. It's a virus that's spread by the bite of a mosquito. And so as the mosquito's geographic range increases, as the mosquito starts to penetrate South America, Central America, the Caribbean, then the virus will follow it.
So the fact that it's spread by mosquitoes as one way of being spread, does that make it harder or easier to contain than, say, Ebola?
In some ways, it makes it much more difficult to contain because whereas with Ebola, primarily the mode of transmission was human to human, so an infected person would get infected by somebody else. So we could institute public health measures and isolate patients and sort of keep them away, sick patients, from those who are healthy. With Zika, it's going to be a bigger challenge because we have to eradicate mosquito reservoirs, and unfortunately, many of the countries that are affected, these are tropical regions, and it's very difficult to eradicate the breeding grounds for mosquitoes.
And other than mosquitoes, how else is it spread?
Well, there have been just recently reported some documented cases of, actually one case of sexual transmission of the virus. And that's thought to be because the virus in some instances, and we don't really know the details, but can reside in genital secretions such as semen. So there was a documented case where an infected person infected his partner.
And so many of the cases are in the southern part of the hemisphere, in South America, Central America, the Caribbean, as we said. And the Summer Olympics are going to be in Rio this summer. How big a concern is that?
This is a very big concern, and it's a really big concern from both a public health perspective as well as from kind of a clinical perspective. And the worry, there are actually two issues to worry about. One is that Zika virus has been linked to this very devastating kind of complication, which is fetal microcephaly. This is where pregnant women who get infected by the virus, they bear children who have abnormally small heads. And these children essentially are dependent for their entire life. and typically their life is shortened as a result of this fetal abnormality. It has been linked to Zika virus infection. So currently the recommendations by public health agencies such as the Centers for Disease Control is that pregnant women do not travel. So certainly with the Olympics coming, the recommendation is that pregnant women should not go to the Olympics.
And I know you're working on some techniques of rapidly detecting not only the Zika virus, but other viruses. Tell us about that.
So my interest, the area of my laboratory is interested in doing research and developing new tests for not only Zika virus, but other viruses that are also spread by the mosquito. So dengue virus, chikungunya virus, West Nile virus, these are other viruses that are spread by the same mosquito vector that spreads Zika virus. So our goal is to develop rapid tests that we can get a blood sample from a patient and be able to diagnose what kind of infection they may have.
And just to be clear, have there been any diagnosed cases here in California?
There have been no cases here in California. In fact, there have been no cases that have been locally transmitted in the United States. All of the cases that have been described in the United States were from returning travelers who had gone to these affected countries, such as Brazil, and had come back sick and had been documented as having Zika virus infection.
So obviously there's a high priority on containing it.
Absolutely. It's important to realize that the mosquito vector that carries Zika virus is actually in California, is actually in the United States. In fact, one strain of that mosquito is actually as far north as New York. So in principle, there is a possibility that the mosquito can carry the virus, although we have not been able to document the virus anywhere in the United States yet.
All right, well, we're obviously keeping a close eye on it. Thanks very much, Dr. Charles Chu, for coming in.
Thank you.
And that is it for now. Thanks for watching. I'm Scott Shafer. For all of KQED's news coverage, please go to kqednews.org. But before we go, we'd like to mark the passing of two Bay Area musicians. Last week, Paul Kantner of Jefferson Airplane died. And this week, we learned that another member of that iconic 60s music group, Signe Anderson, also died on the very same day. Anderson was the band's original female vocalist and was later replaced by Grace Slick. Jefferson Airplane will be honored with a Lifetime Achievement Grammy Award next month.
Support for science programming is provided by these generous contributors.